This guy knows what's up. All Ukraine had to do is say no to NATO to remain neutral. Instead, they chose war with Russia. Big mistake. Yup. Blindness to oneself in these conversations is disturbing. Almost everything said is projection. They're warmongering. Let me show you a little bit more what these people are saying.
You just see the woman carrying that little baby there, and there's those two little girls.
Oh, we're sad for the refugees. You know who's responsible for
Yeah, I
them?
mean, they don't understand.
Zelensky and the government of Ukraine is responsible for
them.
that.
They have no idea.
Look at the look on Dad's face.
For all of their threats, all of their provocation, all of their arrogance in telling civilians to arm up every civilian, passing out weapons to criminals, releasing criminals from prisons, just like we did over here in the U.S., by the way, under COVID-19. Releasing into prisons, handing weapons to hardened criminals, using neo-Nazis as death squads in their ethnic cleansing campaign against Russians for the last 8 years.
And simply spit them out like a fly.
This is what you get.
Flew into the mouth. Spit them out. I'm convinced that such
listen
a
to this
natural
scary
and
voiceover
necessary
they put on
cleansing of
Vladimir
society will only strengthen our country.
Kash, necessary cleansing. That's what jumps out to me. That's Yugoslavia. That's Hitler. That's World War II. Ethnic cleansing.
Well, we have
now Patel is going to give the classic Washington talking point against Putin, trying to dehumanize him, demonize him, turn him into a literal like Dr. Evil, scheming to take over the world. Ooh! Instead of just the leader of a country who has a duty, who has a job according to the constitutional law of his country, and is attempting to do it by securing the people of his country. As well, he has humanitarian concerns. He stood by and watched 14,000 people, mostly ethnic Russians, ethnically cleansed by Ukraine, by the actors and corrupt oligarch puppets, successive presidents of Ukraine, especially under Washington puppetry. And Kash Patel is somehow making excuses for this and still trying to beat this drum of demonizing Putin as being some evil schemer looking to take over the world.
You intelligence spy officer's entire career. So you have to make sure you do not do what most of the Democrats have done in this country and just say he's a fanatic, he's a lunatic. That may be so, but he is also strategically planning for a Russian takeover of the Eastern European so-called Soviet Empire. And so when he says things like there's going to be...
First of all, you know no such thing. That's a talking point. It's the one that we've heard echoed and echoed and echoed in the echo chamber of neocon Washington think tanks forever with zero evidence. What has actually happened is NATO has taken over Europe. NATO has expanded and doubled in size since 1989, despite multiple assurances from Washington to the Russians that this would not happen and NATO would never expand 1 inch to the east. He's saying the exact opposite of truth, projecting the exact actions of Washington and NATO upon Vladimir Putin, despite zero evidence, and in fact the exact opposite is the truth. How is that for big lies? NATO has grown by 15 plus countries. Ukraine is a de facto member of NATO. Despite not having signed to full NATO membership, it is an associate member of NATO. It has been flooded with NATO and Washington weapons, especially for the last 8 years. It's been in military cooperation, military harmonization, all kinds of cross-training. Ukrainians have been cross-training with NATO militaries. NATO militaries have been training Ukraine and its Nazi death squads. You can find out about that. CIA, Washington military, Canadian military, Israel military have been working with the neo-Nazis and the Ukrainian fascist paramilitary squads, which are now part of its military, training them to do this ethnic cleansing campaign. The fuck do these people think we are? They think we're fucking idiots. The picture that has been going on for the last 30 years has been the exact opposite of what Patel and these neocons claim. NATO is taking over Eastern Europe. NATO is a hostile alliance which has no reason to exist after the Warsaw Pact dissolved and the Soviet Union voluntarily dissolved. Not only should it have followed all those promises from Washington to never expand 1 inch to the east, it should have disappeared. The Warsaw Pact disappeared. The Soviet Union disappeared. And the Russians had been asking to either join NATO, no, they were locked out, to join NATO or to have some new kind of successor to assure European security, to prevent the outbreaks of war that everybody was worried about, and to get a handle on the nuclear weapons and so forth. The NATO member countries and Washington especially said, no, we like our position of controlling Europe. We like our position of lording it over Europe and occupying Germany and having them as our little vassal states to boss around. And we reserve the right to expand right up to your borders and beyond. And we know, Patel, dude, we're not stupid. We know there's been a plan to seize Russia and carve it up for years. Some of us have heard about Brzezinski, okay? We know the grand chessboard. Guess what? The world's not your goddamn chessboard. And that sort of overthrow and regime change of Russia is exactly what Kash Patel is suggesting. Sort of obliquely suggesting, well, we hope someone will come from Russia and some brave person. I think we have yet to get to that part.
I think you have to believe that in his head, he thinks every action he's taking is to achieve that end result, which he thinks will become a reality, which is why we need to take it seriously and not just call him a lunatic and be dismissive about it.
But Kash, he can be both, right? Like Ted Kaczynski was calculated and planned, and then he pulled off the Oklahoma City bombing, right? So you can be both. You can be a madman.
He just said the Unabomber did the Oklahoma City bomb. What a moron.
People should put it, but unfortunately everyone isn't putting it as you are. They're either just calling it binary. He's a lunatic.
Right.
That's dismissive. That does not allow our leadership or the world leadership to take him seriously. He has literally instigated another world war, whether we want to label it that.
Putin did not instigate any kind of world war. Putin said was trying for years to avoid the war. Putin said, stop NATO expansion. 1. 2, stop ethnically cleansing the Russian people of Donbass, recognize their independence, which they declared in 2014 after Ukraine was overthrown by Washington, which Kash Patel won't tell you. So many people put their trust in him. And just because he was a sort of a Republican GOP hero of Russia Gate, that is defending Trump against the charges, does not mean he's still not committed to some fanatical hatred and opposition to Russia. These people cannot tear themselves away from hating Russia. They want, for some reason, they have this existential hatred, this fear, this hysteria over Russia. They want to get rid of Russia for some reason. They want to get rid of Russia. They want to knock off its leader, who's wildly popular with the people and will only be made more so by this conflict and all this agitation and this ongoing hybrid war against him from Washington and London. He's only become more popular. So you people, your plan is backfiring. But yes, these guys are the other side of Washington, the other side of the deep state, might I say. They've uncloaked, they've unmasked. You know, some of us followed these guys for years, hoping that they were going to overthrow the corruption in Washington. All they're doing is agitating to overthrow some other country. Let's look at some more of these here. Screen warriors, yeah. World War clown world war propaganda. President Putin, stand your ground. I say, yeah. Ukraine on Fire, Roger Stone documentary. Yeah, everybody needs to watch Ukraine on Fire. Made co-produced by Roger Stone, directed by I think Igor Lopatnik. You got it. Showed you what really went on in Ukraine in 2014. The sequel to that film is Revealing Ukraine. Kash Patel won't tell you any of that stuff. Newsmax won't tell you any of that stuff. how that was masterminded by Washington and Victoria Nuland and John McCain and John Kerry and Obama and, of course, Biden, who became the president of Ukraine after 2014. That's how he installed his son there as, on this gas company, Burisma, and that's how they got into their fingers into all that business in Ukraine. They overthrew the place, and they took over the government. Did Kash Patel tell you that? No. Look at this. Not our business. No, you want us to believe that. Not our business. Both governments, including ours, cannot be believed. Knows what the truth is. Listen to the translator trying to make it sound more ominous. Exactly. Henry Kissinger and other diplomats warned against NATO expansion to Russia's border countries. Kissinger warned, and let's remember, Trump was in some consultations with Kissinger during his transition. Trump maybe went whatever, I don't know what they discussed. It's likely they were discussing something regarding Russia and China. I think Kissinger was trying to steer Trump into recognizing that Russia was a potential ally, a natural ally, not an enemy, and that China was the real enemy. And we saw Trump, I think, trying to assert that kind of weakly, but he got crucified by Russiagate. And Kash Patel was supposed to be one of these guys who was supposedly saving him against all that. But Kash Patel, part of the swamp. He's part of the swamp. He's one of the warmongers. He's one of the regime changers. He wants to regime change other countries because he's under this delusional theory that some people have, especially in Washington, that we own other people's countries. Let me continue with this. Kissinger warned NATO against putting troops in Visegrad countries. I'm not sure what that means. Now 3 of 4 have NATO troops. He also said Ukraine must remain neutral. Instead, exactly, that's what George Kennan said after the Cold War. He said, stop, no more NATO expansion. George Kennan, the author of the Cold War policy of containment, the most famous U.S. diplomat of the post-war era. Instead, Ukraine has been flirting with NATO. That's history you won't hear the mainstream media talking about. It's all about Putin, Russia invading Ukraine because Putin is evil. The people are good. Their leader is evil. Imperialist propaganda. I've watched Russians a lot via the internet. They're a bit tougher than most Westerners, I guess, but the media always pretends the opposing citizenry is cute and fluffy. Exactly. That's exactly what you're being told here. If Newsmax was a news station, they would be talking about biolabs in Ukraine. Man, these people wish they could cover that up. Cat's out of the bag on that one. More comments. These news people are nuts for real. Why is the interpreter speaking in that tone? Weird. Propaganda. What a bunch of idiots. USA commits more war crimes than Russia. Hypocrisy. That's absolutely true. Go back over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Let's just go back to the 30 years to the end of the Soviet Union. I think the Russians, the Soviet Union's last war was Afghanistan. They regretted that. But let's go back the last 30 years. You want to compare the Washington track record against Moscow's? Moscow comes out smelling like roses. More. I don't know about before it's news. If you want to check that out, you can do that. Ukraine propaganda. Yup. Apartheid in Ukraine. Absolutely. Ukraine had full warning. Absolutely. What has happened to you? Our own borders and our Americans left behind in Afghanistan is what our Biden administration wants you to do. These guys are stupid. Horrific. Well, I don't know what she's referring to. He's cleansing the NWO and corruption. That's possible. That's possible. Putin is certainly a better guy than Biden, period. This thing is retarded. Biden, period. Biden, period. Can you believe? Oh, God. This is our AI. Retarded. We got that many crossing our border every month. Oh, I think almost. We need a leader in America who puts America first, not Ukraine, and a military that protects our Constitution. By the way, our Constitution doesn't allow for foreign overthrows and foreign wars of aggression, nor does it really allow for alliances that commit us to, quote, defend other countries. You want to read the Constitution, war powers? It's to defend the United States alone. The states. The states. Not to defend fucking Ukraine and Europe and Asia and Africa and Antarctica and God knows where else, and Mars and Jupiter. It's to defend the states for which the Constitution and government were created. That's it. World War propaganda. I saw that one. Wow, these people ain't fooled. Newsmax is in trouble. Kash Patel is in trouble. Warmongering neocons are in trouble. Your own base doesn't believe you.